The dad has been arrested, and it is learned by his wife that he had a driver's license that he did not renew, and so it expired, and he was stopped in traffic, in transportation. He had that and an unpaid traffic ticket, and now he is in the jail in Hamilton County. The wife is remarkable because in this situation, there is an intact family. There's the wife and the husband, and they are parents, and they have 3 children. And she's busy with the children. One of them is 2 years old, and the others are 6 and 9. And if dad can't make the bail, then he is going to be out of work for the week. He's in jail Saturday. He's in jail Sunday, can't get to church. And she cannot raise the $250 to make the bail. And she is grieving what to do. They're not church people, don't have friends, and their family is from the Wisconsin area, and they're alone here, don't have a lot of connections. And so there's not family resources upon which she can rely. And there he is for a week, and then starting the second week, and the rent is due. And she's had trouble with her husband. She's been dissatisfied with his slow ways. He's not prosperous enough, and there are poor people living in an apartment, and they have some government help with the rent. And yet they are in dire distress because he is in jail downtown on Walnut Street in the dump known as the county jail. And he can't get out for the want of $250. He's one of 318 people down there who are not convicted of anything, but are in the jail among a population of about 482, according to figures last week from the Sheriff's Department. Over in Silverdale, there are 901 people jailed for up to 364 days. And of those, 359 are pre-trial. What that means is they're unconvicted. They've not been shown to have done anything wrong, and yet they cannot pay the bondsman, or cannot come up with the cash to pay to put the money up outright for the bail, the bond. And the bond is simply there to ensure that those people will be in court on the date assigned, and that is all. It's not an attempt to fine anybody. It's not an attempt to judge anybody. It's just a way, by routine among the judges, to set a level to ensure that the people who are charged will show up for court. And yet, for many of them, it is an insurmountable barrier. What we need in Chattanooga is a bail disruptor program, a charitable program like one reported on by NBC News last week, that would use charitable donations, charitable giving, to pay the bondsman or to pay the bond up front. The money, of course, is then returned to the party who put up the money when the defendant makes appearance in court and deals with the new charges. That's what we have to have. I propose for Chattanooga and Hamilton County. This is David Tulis, a new venue for charitable giving in Hamilton County. In Chattanooga, a place, an office, a bureau, perhaps run by someone who's paid part-time, someone with some legal background, legal interest, who will look into cases one by one and put the money up so that party will make the hearing. And yet, in the time pending between the time of jailing and the hearing, that party will be free to live his life or her life and maintain things at home. Because there's a problem when you have someone who's poor, and often these are black people. They are incarcerated day after day, and the problems compound. According to the story, pretrial defendants who can't afford bail risk losing jobs, housing, relationships, even custody of children. And sometimes being stuck in jail can destroy your life. There's a mention of a 26-year-old man, Jeffrey Pendleton, who was in jail in New Hampshire, cited for misdemeanor marijuana possession. He could not afford the $100 bail, and he died in jail. And of course, you've perhaps heard of Khalif Browder. In 2015, he committed suicide after being held for 3 years in Rikers Island, including long periods in solitary confinement while awaiting trial for stealing a backpack when he was 16 years old. And the bail was set at $3,000, which he just couldn't afford that. nor his family. They couldn't afford the bondsman, who usually charges 10% cash. That's his fee. He pretends, or he does, put up the money with the system, and makes his living that way. And so there are many problems. There's a man quoted named Vincent Sutherland, the executive director of the Center on Race, Inequality, and Law at New York University Law, and a member of the Bail Project Board. He says the domino effect on those lives is that you're cut off from employment, cut off from opportunities to reunite with your family, cut off from the community at large, and it really puts a pause in your life if you're sitting in jail waiting for your criminal case to be resolved. And the problem is that the pressure to compromise on the truth is huge for these people who simply can't afford it. And so what they're given in our judicial industrial complex here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County is a deal, right? The state is the accuser on one end, and the state is the deal maker on the other through the public defender's office. And that is, well, just compromise, plead guilty, and you're out. Okay, plead guilty, and you're free, and it's just a misdemeanor. Don't worry about it. Don't make a big deal about it. And you say, well, it's not true. I didn't do it. Well, if you can't plead guilty, you're just going to have to stay in jail until somebody comes up with the money. And what you have now is that you have people pleading guilty to charges untruthfully, right? It's in their best interest to plead, but it's not true. And the state at both ends of the spectrum makes it happen, and you have one more black man, one more woman, one more poor person with a criminal record that can't easily be removed. On any given night, there are more than 450,000 Americans locked up in jails. They're charged, but they're not convicted. They are charged and not convicted, and they're disproportionately black, and they're disproportionately, as I say, low income. And so we have a problem, and what we need to have is a nice American recycling project, and that is to say, you recycle these dollars from the donor. And the Bail Disruptor Program, which will be starting off in Tulsa and St. Louis, has a base of capital of $30 million given by wealthy donors such as Mike Novogratz, who's an investor and a hedge fund manager. And the goal is to have this money, of course, reused, because the person who's being given the favor of having the bail money put up for him or her will, of course, make the court hearings, and then the money will be returned to the fund. That's what happens. If you make the hearings, which is why the bond is demanded in the first place, you then get the money back. So the money can be used over and over again. A single dollar can be used dozens of times to free people, the poor and the black and the unfortunate, paying $250 bonds or bails, or paying the whole amount. And then we have the problem of actually looking at the whole cash bail system. And Sheriff Jim Hammond is looking at it. He knows there's a serious problem here. It's come to his attention. There are reforms proposed, for example, in Philadelphia, where the comptroller has written a 25-page paper, very interesting reading, in which he says the whole system should be done away with, because there's really no connection between appearance in court and the bail amount. And people who can't make it, often they are, if you're poor, think about it. Poor people often are poor because they have so many contingencies that they can't deal with, right? They have someone getting sick, someone's in the hospital. They don't have the money. Their car breaks down. They have ill-maintained vehicles. They don't have cash flow like you do. They don't have savings. And so one little disruption means that they can't find the bus fare to go out of their way to miss work for a day and show up for court. So their lives are marked by contingencies, and they are just simply abused because the system, of course, doesn't care anything about that. You have a duty to show up for the court, and so you're going to have to make it. Well, this is David Tulis, and I argue for local economy and the free market. I argue for mercy, and in this national fund that will start in 2 cities in January, and then spread to maybe 40 others. We need to have a local system like that, where you maybe have a few hundred helped every year. In the national plan, launched by Robin Steinberg, an attorney, it is hoped that 160,000 people will be helped to end the kind of cash register 2-tiered system in courts around the country. We have that here. If you're wealthy, I'm of course a poor editor, and a poor journalist. So I'm not really wealthy, but I could probably make a cash payment probably directly if I was charged with something and there was some doubt about my willingness to appear before the judge. And but most people who are in the jail now don't have that. They can't just write a check for $500 or $1,000. And I might have to double check to see if I can write a check today for $1,000 to bail myself out. But the bail project is something that would have a great snowball effect for the good, and would let us live out our theme here, which is loving our neighbors. And of course, my theme in the marketplace is loving our neighbors and buying local. Part of the problem that poor people have is they're often just forgetful, right? They're not organized like you are. They don't have notepads. They don't have calendars. And so their court days come and they just forget, So what happens in the system that Robin Steinberg is devising is that there will be care for these people, reminding them, hey, you've got your hearing on Thursday this week. Have you made arrangements to get off of work? Have you taken care that your children who are at home will have care while your wife starts her new job, right? Because she suddenly got a job, seeing that there was going to be problems in the account balance of the family since you were locked away in the dump downtown. She's going to have to work. So she got a job, and so while she's out, you have to have childcare arranged. And the caller says, have you and has she made arrangements for childcare while you're in court? Because you can be in court all day here in Hamilton County for a 20-minute interview, right? That happens all around the country. In the story in New York, again, we're citing here NBC News' story, and the headline is "Bail Disruptors Have a Plan to Free Thousands from U.S. Jails." Dateline is Tulsa. Several times a week, the Freedom Fund bail disruptors travel to the boat, which is a jail on a boat on the Bronx shoreline, like a barnacle. And they pass a trash processing plant, a fish market, and they go down a long drive topped with concertina wire. And there's the bail office. After sliding money through a rusted slot at the window, the mostly African-American and Leto citizens who come to pay bail for their loved ones must somehow wait for hours as paperwork is faxed back and forth among offices. Nova Gratz, so this is the millionaire, traveled with a disruptor to the boat where the average daily population of male inmates hovers near 800. Around 2 p.m., after Nova Gratz and the disruptor paid bail for 2 men, he was shocked to find that they wouldn't be able to get out of jail until 11 p.m. Upon release, he said they'd be given a city transit metro card and would have to walk to the nearest bus stop, only to come back the next morning to pick up their belongings. So you see how the whole thing is rigged against you. Quote, every step of the way that day, you realized that there's a system that was just kicking everybody in the knees. There was absolutely no dignity built into the system, and all these people were arrested, not even convicted. So you see, we have a problem. Now, there's a challenge for the mayor's, not for the mayor, for the sheriff's position. The sheriff is Jim Hammond in Hamilton County. He's elected, and there's one announced challenger, Victor Miller, who's a spokesman and a detective in the Chattanooga Police Department. The question is, how important is this for Victor Miller? Is this something that he wants to see resolved in Hamilton County? Because as I say, it's about 66% of the people in the jail are non-convicted. They're not convicted, right? Pre-trial, these are sort of euphemisms, but they haven't been shown to have done anything evil, and yet they're in jail. And some are in jail for weeks and weeks, and they can't get out. Is there some churchman, some Christian who has some insight into this, can make these connections and help these people out for God's glory, right? That could be done by a Christian expressing God's grace of forgiveness to sinners, but here projecting God's grace for relief from the jail by someone who puts up the bail money. And that's 66% of people held in the jail downtown, where everybody who's arrested goes for booking, and where there is a magistrate waiting to review the accusations. And about a third in Silverdale, 359 people out of 901 are there so-called pretrial. They're not convicted. They're waiting for trial. How can anybody prepare for trial, a criminal matter, in a jail? You can't. You simply can't. That is a due process violation. Your rights to due process are being violated if you're being held in jail and you can't get out. I think the magistrates just they have their set amounts. Well, this person's charged with this. Let's just lay the bail for this amount. Well, there has to be when the bail is set, there has to be an investigation by the magistrate of the person's local connections. And of course, some of that's done, but I suspect it's probably pretty cursory, and perhaps we would want to suggest maybe without the proper empathy. And these are things worth looking into, right? These are things that the local press would be wise to look at. There's a man named Ezra Richkin, a project director for the Freedom Fund, has helped 95% of his clients return to their court dates. They get a text message or a call the week before saying, "Hey, remember to find childcare next week during your court date because it might last 8 hours, even though you only see the judge for 20 seconds. Remember to call your job and asking for the day off." That's the kind of support people need. They don't need to be locked up in order to make a court date. And what's also interesting is that people who have gotten bail and are out, they have a much better success in resisting the charges. Many charges by cops are spurious, and we know some here in Chattanooga are based on perjury. We have examples in 2016 that we've reported on in detail here at Nooga Radio. David Tulis, your host here, reported on in great detail, suggestive of a larger culture of careless charging. And if you have someone pay your bail and you're out, you have a 50% dismissal rate. If you're pleading guilty because you just have to get out and you're just desperate, you have a blot on your record, and it will last a lifetime. The state's mark upon you will last a lifetime. And there are so many people in Hamilton County who are simply ruined by their concessions with the machine, right? The state machine that accuses them as if somehow the state had standing to accuse people, as if the state somehow were injured by their alleged crimes. I suspect that probably most people in the Hamilton County Jail are not probably as many as half. Let me just guess, are not guilty of any real common law crime, but some kind of paper crime, some kind of offense against the system, some kind of indifference or hostility to the system, not actual crimes or sins, right? And because that's the way it is, I think there's an interest from people like you, my listener, to express charity and grace. What does Victor Miller say about the cash bail problem? Is he working on a plan to solve it? Now, we have in our analysis, of course, the grave problem in the courts in Hamilton County, and that is the widespread rejection of a statute at 39-11-301, and that is a requirement for culpable mental state. And we're asking that Tom Greenholz, criminal court judge, Don Poole, and Barry Steelman, that they review that statute and not accept any case from prosecutor Neil Pinkston and his fellowship of the finger, that is to say the cops and the deputies, unless the officer is willing to aver that there is evidence in the accusations he plans to file of guilty mind, culpable mental state, as it's called. That statute is widely ignored. And of course, the defense bar ignores it as well. Everybody in the legal system in our judicial industrial complex in Hamilton County and Chattanooga, widely ignoring that in every criminal matter where it's not explicitly excluded by statute, there has to be proof of intent. Now think about that just for a second. If that statute were respected by these three judges and by Lila Statham and Gary Starnes in city court and any other dealing with criminal matters, we would stop our jail overcrowding problems overnight. So you see, if we just respect the law that we have, and that law, by the way, originates in Christianity. It originates in the book of Deuteronomy, because God has a distinction in his mind between murder and manslaughter. One is an accident and one is intentional. So intent is important in a criminal matter. And we have hundreds of crimes on the books. Many of them are not crimes at all. They're just state crimes, right? Crimes against the state wanting to lord it over us and to diminish us and to humiliate us. That's what it does with all of its statutes. And so intent remains an important element of reform. I think if we push reform, we need to push intent, and some wealthy donor, you, my listener, maybe the man who matters, right here on the David Tulis Show, you, the man who matters, put up $500,000. Why don't you? We can hire a young attorney to manage it, and we can get these people out. We can express mercy. And now we have a whole area for evangelism, right? The church can say, well, we know you've got, we helped bail you out. We'd like you to come meet us. We have a message for you, a wonderful message of forgiveness. And there are Christian friends here. They want to look out for you. Come meet us. Come hear what we have to say. That's the work of the church, bringing fortitude and encouragement to the souls of poor people whom, as I say, often have tumultuous lives full of contingencies, full of uncertainties. And a wealthy donor can ease them a bit on the cash bail bond side. This is David Tulis, Nooga Radio.
The Tennessee Valley's News Talk, the radio.